Greetings, my fellow ghouls, goblins, and ghosts. Welcome back to my channel and our 61 Days of Halloween event. Yay! I'm really excited because I love sci-fi horror. I love mad scientist horror. I love all the Frankenstein films. I haven't seen all of them, but I've seen most of them. But I don't know, I love mad scientist horror, which is what we basically made an entire week out of for 61 Days of Halloween. We did nothing but mad scientist horror movies, and it was a lot of fun. And there were a few first-time watches and a few revisits, but I think I'm pretty impressed with this year's mad scientist category. It was just so much fun because I love, like I said, I love sci-fi horror. I love mad scientist horror. Sci-fi horror is something I didn't really used to like much when I was younger, but getting older, I love all forms of horror. I formed a love for more subgenres of horror than I have in the past, and sci-fi horror, mad scientist horror is one of those things. So without further ado, let's get started with Mad Scientist Week. For day one of Mad Scientist Week, we had a double feature of Frankenstein 1931 and Bride of Frankenstein 1935. I thought it was necessary to put them together just because it's the perfect double feature, and I love horror films that have a sequel that take place immediately after the fact. And that's what Bride of Frankenstein does, but we'll get into that in a minute. Frankenstein 1931 is one of those I didn't see for the first time until I was 19 years old. Before I went into the Frankenstein films, or before I watched Frankenstein for the first time, I thought, Frankenstein's monster was a villain, because I didn't know the story. Watching the first film, I think we can all agree that the real evil in these kind of movies are the humans. Frankenstein's monster was so misunderstood. He didn't ask to be created. He didn't know any better. And a lot of scenes in Frankenstein 1931 really make you feel for the creature. I love Frankenstein 1931. You have a mad scientist wanting to create new life, emulate God, and create a brand new person out of dead body parts. Grave robbing, stealing brains, all that good stuff. The film was directed by James Whale and was adapted from Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein, or it's also called The Modern Prometheus, which I think is a really cool name. I don't know why they did away with that name. I guess people wouldn't understand it. I don't know. A really fun fact about Frankenstein 1931. A warning at the beginning if you watch Frankenstein 1931. Well, apparently that was added in post-production to avoid any religious groups getting mad at the story, because the story basically is about a man trying to emulate God. This wasn't the first adaptation of Frankenstein. There was a 1910 silent adaptation, and it was a short film. I think most films back in that era were short, but there was one from 1910 with the same name, and it was produced by Thomas Edison, or Edison Studios. And I've never seen that, but I've been wanting to. I might add that next year to 61 Days of Halloween. There are just so many films to add. It's kind of hard to keep up with all of them. As always, Frankenstein 1931, 5 out of 5 skulls. But I don't know if I'm going to catch hate from the horror community for saying this. I think I might like Bride of Frankenstein a little better than Frankenstein 1931. I don't know what it is. I think I like certain scenes better. My favorite scene in Bride of Frankenstein 1935 is when Frankenstein's monster is injured and he stumbles on the home of an elderly blind man who takes him in, and he is also in need of a friend. He's lonely, and they kind of, they're good company for each other, and there's something about that scene that really warmed my heart. I love Bride of Frankenstein. That's probably my all-time favorite Universal monster film. And you don't see the bride until the very end, but the story leading up to it is amazing. And again, this film, just like the first one, encompasses the feeling of spooky season. So both of those, 5 out of 5. I think I would have to put Bride of Frankenstein a little bit over Frankenstein 1931, but it is what it is. Both films 5 out of 5. Day 1 was a fantastic day. Day 2, we did The Invisible Man, and we actually added The Brain That Wouldn't Die, since we thought we didn't have time for another one, but we actually did have time for another one. So I watched The Brain That Wouldn't Die. I wanted to add that originally, and I was like really upset when I couldn't add that, because there's just so many. There's more mad scientist horror films than I actually thought there were. The Invisible Man is great, and it is an H.G. Wells story. I think they made a 2020 remake. I think Blumhouse put out a 2020 remake. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that, and I really want to see that. But I love The Invisible Man. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that. The Invisible Man, 1933, phenomenal film. I don't know if it was supposed to be funny or not. There were some really comedic scenes in The Invisible Man 1933. Like the whole scene where he's in the inn and they're trying to force him out because he's being rude to his host, and he just wants to be left alone to do his experiment, but he's like coming off rude, so they called the police and they're trying to force him out, but he's like taking off all these layers that he has around his body. He has bandages, he's got clothes on, but as he's taking them off, you don't see anything. Like his hands are missing, his head's missing. He takes off like a prosthetic nose that he has, and he like throws it at the cop. It's hilarious. And I don't know if this was supposed to be funny or like, I think it was supposed to be scary for back then, but I see it as like a horror comedy now. But I could kind of see like how something like that would be scary, but for back then. Claude Rains is fantastic. He's great. You can also see him in The Wolfman, which we talked about last week. I have to watch The Invisible Man any chance I get. And even like if I'm in like a crappy mood or like my depression's acting up, sometimes I just throw on The Invisible Man, and you know, it's kind of like a comfort movie. 5 out of 5 for The Invisible Man. The Brain That Wouldn't Die. That is a great movie. I actually watched that for the first time earlier this year, and I'm really happy that I was able to fit it in this year's schedule for 61 Days of Halloween, just because of how fun and fantastic of a film it is. I did the Elvira version on Tubi, and that was a lot of fun. Elvira's Movie Macabre. The movie's great. It kind of reminds me of like a mixture of like Frankenstein and Reanimator, like Bride of Reanimator, and Frankenhooker a little bit. It just, any mad scientist movie you could think of where they're trying to revive the dead, it's all like wrapped up into one to me for this one, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but The Brain That Wouldn't Die is amazing. If you are a fan of Reanimator, if you're a fan of any of the Frankenstein films, watch The Brain That Wouldn't Die. Basically, a man's wife gets decapitated in a car accident, and he revives her head, has it hooked to this machine. She's sitting in these like chemicals, which kind of reminds me of the serum in Reanimator, even though the film came out after the fact. The head is alive, but he has to find her a body, and she's not happy about being revived. I guess it's painful just being a head, and she's upset. And without spoiling anything, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you guys just to go watch The Brain That Wouldn't Die. It's free on Tubi. I recommend the Elvira's Movie Macabre version. That's the version that I saw. The Brain That Wouldn't Die is amazing. 5 out of 5 skulls. Day 3, we did Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1931. That one was interesting. It was basically about a doctor wanting to awaken his more animalistic side. So he takes a serum and brings out his more animalistic personality, which is Mr. Hyde. Mr. Hyde is terrifying. I mean, just look at this motherfucker. This guy is fucking terrifying. He's like, I don't know, like a wolfish ape man. The way he acts in the film is just really creepy, and the way he just like treats women is just terrible, but the movie overall, the story is a good one. I highly recommend it if you've never seen it. It's a really good ad if you're looking for like movies to watch during Halloween season. So definitely give Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde 1931 a try. It's really good. And for day 4, we had my personal favorite, which was introduced to me by my fiance, The Tingler, 1959, starring Vincent Price. And this one was a William Castle film, and if you're familiar with him, he did a lot of his gimmick horror films, like House on Haunted Hill had the flying skeleton in the audience. This film had buzzers, I think, under the seat to make you think there was like a creature running underneath you. But if you've never seen The Tingler, there is a creature in it. It's indestructible. And you'll see if you watch the film why they put buzzers underneath the seat. And if you're familiar with 13 Ghosts, which we have later on in this 61 Days of Halloween event, when they showed that in the theater, they had special glasses that they gave to everybody to where they could also see the ghosts. William Castle, he was great at doing this. He was great at doing like gimmick horror movies. I really love The Tingler because the whole concept is fear being a living entity in the human body. He believes that this entity can be removed. And spoiler alert, someone dies from fright, and he does surgically remove what he calls it the tingler, I guess because it tingles the spine, or like, you know, the whole like phrase when you're afraid, spine tingling. He removes it, he realizes it can't be destroyed, he realizes it could actually physically kill somebody because it's strong. There's actually a scene where it gets a hold of Vincent Price's neck and just starts squeezing, and it can kill you. It's a hard movie to describe. I apologize if I'm not describing it correctly, but just go ahead and watch it. It's amazing. If you're a fan of House on Haunted Hill, if you're a fan of 13 Ghosts, give this one a watch. Day 5, we had a double feature of The Fly 1958 and David Cronenberg's The Fly 1987. Or was it 86? I forget. The Fly 1958 was a first time watch for me. I actually watched the remake last year for 61 Days of Halloween when we did our body horror category, and I loved it. I love all David Cronenberg films. Like, you've probably seen my Rabid and Shivers reviews, but God, the original Fly was also amazing, and I think I love both equally. I'll go ahead and rate both equally. Their stories are similar but different at the same time. It's really hard for me to describe, but without spoiling anything, I'm just going to go ahead and say The Fly 1958 followed by The Fly, David Cronenberg's The Fly. That's a great double feature to watch, actually, and it's a fun compare and contrast. I want to do like a whole video eventually of me actually comparing and contrasting both films. I'm actually thinking about doing a series of YouTube videos where I compare and contrast remakes and originals. But for now, I'll go ahead and rate 5 out of 5 for both. Both have a very sad ending. I'll go ahead and say that. The ending to The Fly 1958 was like a little silly, but I guess you could see how it would be scary for back then. But it was also a great ending, and the effects for back then were just amazing. But God, David Cronenberg's The Fly, the end of it, I'm just gonna go and say, it really it made me tear up. I'm a sensitive person, and if sad things happen in a horror movie, if somebody, you know, if it turns out somebody's spouse dies or something, I get really upset because I think of my spouse. I don't know if I'm the only one who does that. Again, go ahead and check both of them out if you've never seen either one of them before. They're both amazing films. Like I said, different but similar at the same time, if that makes sense. Day 6 was actually my favorite day, and that is because we called that one Reanimator Day. We had Reanimator 1985, and we had The Bride of Reanimator 1989 or 1990. I forget which year exactly it was. The internet says different things. Streaming services say different things too. Reanimator, I've actually had a whole podcast episode where I talked nothing but Reanimator. It's one of my all-time favorite horror films. It's in my top 10s. It's amazing. It's gory. I've never read the original H.P. Lovecraft serial story, but I really want to. Oh my god. I've talked about Reanimator so many times. It's about a mad scientist, Dr. Herbert West, who creates a serum to reanimate dead people, and he wants to defeat death. And somebody who I actually have a clinical death phobia, that film actually means a lot to me, and it's a comfort film because like it gives me that feeling of, this can be defeated, if that makes sense. And that's exactly what Herbert West is trying to do in this film. And he moves in with another scientist or doctor, Dr. Dan, who also goes to Miskatonic U, and they end up working together. And it's the gore effects. Stuart Gordon is just, oh my god, it's phenomenal. The effects are phenomenal. The story is great. Jeffrey Combs, Bruce Abbott, Barbara Crampton, they all do a fantastic job. And if you guys have seen any Stuart Gordon movie, you probably already know who they are. I know most of the horror community has probably already seen Reanimator. Bride of Reanimator is fantastic. It meshes the Reanimator story, and the concept of Bride of Frankenstein, where they create a woman. It's actually like everything like I thought Bride of Frankenstein was going to be. The first time I saw that, I thought they were going to create her throughout the film in increments. And this is actually a really great follow-up to Reanimator. Of all the Reanimators, I love Beyond Reanimator. I've noticed there's a few Reanimator films on Tubi that don't have Jeffrey Combs as Herbert West, and I think they came out recently. If you guys have seen those, let me know how they are in the comments. I don't know, I've been kind of on the fence about watching them because Jeffrey Combs is just iconic to me. And I don't know if anybody else can really play Herbert West the way Jeffrey Combs does. So let me know how those films are in the comments. I don't know if you guys know about them. There's actually a film called The Curse of the Reanimator with a completely different person playing Herbert West. So yeah, I've never seen those, but I've seen the rest of the Reanimators. They're all great, all 5 out of 5. Go and watch them if you have not. And for the last day, day 7, we did From Beyond, 1986, and that's another Stuart Gordon film. And we did Frankenhooker, 1990, which is Frank Henenlotter. It was basically most mad scientist films are like Frankenstein-esque, if you know what I mean. I think I love any kind of Frankenstein film. I love the concept of Frankenstein and, reviving dead tissue, bringing back the dead, that kind of thing. From Beyond, though, that is a really good film, and it actually pairs really well with Reanimator. They're different stories, different mad scientist stories. This one has a machine that can stimulate the pineal gland and make you see and feel things that you wouldn't normally see or feel. It gets pretty scary. And somebody who like myself, who does meditations that actually do stimulate the pineal gland, like meditations that, associate with the pineal gland, it was actually a really scary film for me. Stuart Gordon did a great job with that. It's another H.P. Lovecraft story, and I haven't read that one, but I really want to. It also stars Jeffrey Combs and Barbara Crampton, and it also has Ken Foree. You may recognize him from Dawn of the Dead. He plays Keenan's dad in Keenan and Kel, if you watched that show on Nickelodeon back in the day. I think a lot of us 90s kids did watch that. He also played in Rob Zombie's Devil's Rejects as... what was his name? I feel terrible, I forgot his name. I think Wolf J. Flywheel was his name. I don't know, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong with that. But You know who Ken Foree is. He's an icon. Ken Foree is great in the film. Barbara Crampton's great in the film. Jeffrey Combs is great. The effects are great. Fun fact about From Beyond, the scientist that dies at the beginning, Dr. Pretorius, notice how they took Dr. Pretorius from Bride of Frankenstein. I don't know if that was intentional. I thought that was an interesting fact. I think that's where they got the name, so I'm just gonna go with that. I thought it was pretty cool. From Beyond, I give 5 out of 5 stars. It's like, when I first saw it for the first time, it was unlike anything I've ever seen before. And it was great. And every time I watch it, I always love it even more. 5 out of 5 for From Beyond. Frankenhooker. Frankenhooker 1990. That one, gosh, that one's Frank Henenlotter. He did Brain Damage and he did Basket Case. Both of those films I absolutely fucking love. Frank Henenlotter, he's great. Frankenhooker, this guy's wife basically or fiance gets decapitated with a lawnmower, and he's kind of like similar to the brain that wouldn't die, but not really. He wants to find a new body for her, but instead of just finding a whole body, he wants to make like a woman out of like different parts, like Bride of Frankenstein basically. And it's a horror comedy made out of different hooker parts. That's why it's called Frankenhooker. I love her main quotes. Want a date? Got any money? Need some action? Want to go out? 5 out of 5 skulls. It was good, like, comic relief, and even the end is hilarious. The end is not sad or anything like most of these reviving the dead films are. It's kind of like goofy, and I love that. I love goofy. 5 out of 5. Wow. All of these films are 5 out of 5. Like I said in my last video, like most of these movies are going to be 5 out of 5 because I tried to pick the best of the best. Mad Scientist Week was so much fun. Next week we have Witch Week, and that one's a lot of fun. We've never done a witch category. That's why we took the werewolf category out this year, so we can give witches a chance. And you know, as most of you guys know that follow me on Twitter, I'm actually a magic practitioner. I've been practicing for like 13 years now. I'm Wiccan, so that's gonna be a fun little topic. I might throw some like real like witchcraft facts in there if you guys want. Tune in for next week for Witch Week. I'm really excited. Thank you for watching. Please give me a like and subscribe so I know that you like this kind of content. I apologize again for being nervous. I'm still kind of, getting used to this again. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at PurgatoriHorror and on Instagram with the same handle. Follow me on Letterboxd at PurgatoriHour. I'm going to be I'm going to be updating my blog very soon, PurgatoriHorror.wordpress.com. I'm going to be trying to put like more like reviews on there as much as I can. I'm going to be doing TikTok videos. Follow me whenever I get that situated. I'll put a link on my Twitter so you guys can follow, and I'll put a link on the video. I don't know, I think my right now, I forget, I think it's Purgatory_hour, or PurgatoriHour, but I'm going to change it to PurgatoriHorror because what's PurgatoriHour? Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching again. I'm still running in the competition for the Face of Horror, and I actually advanced to the top 20. Yay! And I want to thank you guys so much for that. Thank you so much for voting for me. It would mean a lot if you continue to vote for me. I'll just drop the link down in the description below and just keep on voting for me. That would be awesome. Thank you so much, guys. I love you. So long and pleasant screams.